All righty, let's do it on a TGI Friday edition of the Chico Borman Show. Welcome in 216-626-7901, the number for you to get involved. It was 1 week ago today we launched the show. My, how we have grown up in 1 week. Well, some of us have. I haven't, but others have. It is great to have you along as always, and as I said, a Friday edition. We've got a lot to get to. Drama all over the place. All over the place. Last night on the hardwood, whether it be the college basketball level and the Sweet 16, our Cavaliers, your Cavaliers with the win over the Nets. I'll tell you what. Nick, let's just we gotta play. I can't. I'm like a kid at. Well, I'll tell you what. Yeah, I'll set it up a little bit here. Cavaliers with, I think it was like 0.7 of a second left. Isaac Okoro buries a three, and Okoro's. You know, it's weird. Okoro is one of those guys with the fans anyway. Some really like him. Some and. You know, a lot of it has to do with when he's shooting the ball well, you like him, and that's, fair for a lot of guys. He is a defensive stopper. I've always been an Okoro fan, but in terms of being able to consistently knock that down, I think he's gotten better. We also forget that, again, these guys are young and they are still developing whatnot, but do we have the clip ready? All right, this is like, been waiting for like an hour so we could play this. Now, many of you have heard the Booby Show, Booby's World. Daniel Gibson, former Cavalier, former Texas Longhorn, by the way. His Horns play tonight. But he and Rafa Hernandez Brito, what's his nickname?
The El Alcalde, Chico. It's the mayor in Spanish. Rafa El Alcalde, Cavs bilingual play-by-play announcer.
Not many people could get away with that nickname, but he can. And he can in large part, as I said, Isaac Okoro with 0.7 of a second left. Rafa Hernandez Brito does the Spanish broadcast. I think he's the only one who's done every major sport. He's done Super Bowl. He's done Masters. Of course, now, like I said, you get to see him with Booby and the show. And he's a natural. I'm not just talking play-by-play, just in front of the microphone, in front of the camera. So here is his call in Spanish, Isaac Okoro with the winning shot last night in Brooklyn.
Falla Mitchell, recoge el rebote. Uy, ay. Mitchell, ¿qué pasó con eso? La tienen todavía los Cavs. Caris la ve con la pelota para Okoro que lanza el triple en la esquina. ¡Sí! 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 ¡Isaac Okoro! Acaba de darle la ventaja a los Cavs con 0.7 de segundo en el reloj. ¡Qué barbaridad los Cavaliers de Cleveland! Una vez más remolcando de ventaja en doble cifras. Falla el tiro libre Donovan Mitchell. Falla el putback también la araña. Y después todavía el balón suelto. Y con tiempo por jugar, 2 rebotes ofensivos de Mitchell.
When you can do that, and he does that on a regular basis, you can get away with calling yourself the mayor. It was phenomenal, and it was also phenomenal to see the Cavs pull that one out. with a little drama at the again. Isaac Okoro with the winning shot. Now that wasn't all we had. We had college basketball, which we're going to get to that in a moment. Reserved a little bit of time there, and this is going to be it's not going to be good for me, but that's okay. I'm used to it by now. Sometimes self-deprecation can be very therapeutic, and I'm living proof of that. I do want to let you know, coming up later in the show, we always have a guest at the top of the 2 o'clock hour, and that young man is going to be Brad Ward with the OBR, and also has a podcast as well. Does a great job covering the Browns. Actually, one of the really, really, truly good guys in this business. He is, as we said, the podcast, All Eyes on Cleveland. Wanted to make sure I got that right. All Eyes on Cleveland. That's with a Z. And, of course, contributor for the OBR. What's next for the Browns? You were talking about Chark yesterday, Nick, and he just signed with
just signed with the Panthers. The Panthers making some waves in this free agency. Obviously hopped up to the number 1 pick in that huge blockbuster with the Chicago Bears, but then they landed Adam Thielen in free agency, was released from the Vikings, signed with Carolina. Now they go with DJ Chark. Making a little bit of noise out there are the Carolina Panthers. Obviously, the big thing is the quarterback. That's what they got to figure out. But
CJ, I mean, I promise this is not an Ohio State homer call. It just feels, and I go back to that Frank Reich stat, which is kind of ridiculous. And you say, oh, come on, man, he's not looking at. Some of those guys do look at the height. Some of those guys do absolutely. Frank Reich he's never had a quarterback under 6'2". And I think the majority, like 80% of his quarterbacks have been 6'4" or more.
They added a lot of vets too.
Yeah.
This is not a team that wants to be like Hugh Jackson's 1-31 Browns and
Jackson's here, folks.
Do this all over again, and this season with their new quarterback. Because if you look at some of the guys they picked up Miles Sanders in free agency. They got Terrence Marshall Jr.
I love Miles Sanders.
And then Terrence Marshall Jr., that young receiver from North Carolina. Definitely a lot of promise there. They picked up Hayden Hurst, tight end, in free agency. And then that defense is ready to go too. Obviously, Shaq Thompson at linebacker. They picked up Von Bell to play strong safety. Jeremy Chin is their standout young free safety, one of the best in the game. So, yeah, this is a Panthers roster that's ready to go. So I get the Bryce Young and the Anthony Richardson, maybe a little bit more boom or bust potential, could be really good. I'm with you. I think CJ Stroud is a layup here because it's the smart pick. It's the guy that's NFL ready to go, tall, can stand in the pocket, make all the throws. I think that's where Carolina has to go there.
Yeah, and I don't want people to think that, I'm looking at Bryce Young and, oh, well, he's short, so you automatically do. But it really does. At the NFL level, you do have to take that into consideration. Now, unlike Kyler Murray, who has proven not only that he can't stay healthy, but also that he really doesn't give a damn about film study, that everything we hear and read, that is not Bryce Young at all. But I just think C.J. Stroud will be the guy for Carolina. But we're going to get into plenty more football, plenty more NFL, and certainly specifically your Browns, what could be next. There's still some defensive linemen available, still some defensive tackles out there available. And again, I can tell you, if there's a guy that's going to be all over it, that is always all over it, again, he does a great job. Brad Ward, follow him on Twitter at Ward on Sports, coming your way at 2 o'clock. All right, 216-626-7901, the Chico Borman Show. Again, you can find us on YouTube, the Chico Borman Show. Subscribe today. On Twitter, you might be watching and listening on Twitter. You can go to Twitter at Chico Show CLE. Check that out. And, of course, bigplay.com. Yesterday, a very big day for me, getting an Instagram account. Or actually, it was 2 days ago. But I had a scare yesterday, Padone. Very big scare. And you kind of got dragged into that.
Yeah, why don't we tell the good people, Chico, what went down last night?
So, okay, I won't even preface it with all the, people know that I'm not very savvy with this stuff. I do know Twitter, or at least I'm on Twitter, have been on Twitter for a while. Facebook, I sometimes check it. I don't know the first thing about Instagram. finally one of my buddies is like, your buddy Nick, is doing a phenomenal job, these reels that he's putting out, and they're little clips of the show. And I mean, they're just, it's really well done. And I said, I probably should get, because somebody said, do you have an Instagram account? And I said, well, the show has an Instagram account. And he's like, well, maybe you should get an Instagram account. So I got it. And last night, I'm just kind of playing with the app, right? Just going through, and I hit something that said my story, okay? And I don't have a story, but I click on my story, and then somehow I must have clicked something else, and next thing I know, every photo in my phone, like the whole camera roll, is on the screen. Now, first of all, I don't have any of those, questionable in poor taste photos, but like, for instance, HR, I just started on here with the good folks at Big Play. So you've got social number, the social security card and driver's license. So I had a picture of it. That was right there. I have some other pictures, which we won't go into, but I thought they were all going out like live on my Instagram account. And I am flipping out. I'm like, I can't, what am I doing? So I mentioned yesterday, I call my buddy. I'm dog sitting for him in University Heights, and he is currently in Houston. Had his flight canceled last night. He's on his way to Mexico. His wife is from Mexico. They have twins. They have another daughter. So imagine, you're a family. Many of you parents can just imagine the headache that is. You get there, you're ready to fly. Sorry, it's canceled. Well, now enter into the equation me calling him, and he's in the airport, and I'm like, hey, Brian, everything all right? Well, not really, man, because we're canceled. I'm like, oh, I'm sorry to hear that. I really wasn't. I was more concerned about my phone. I said, hey, you obviously have access to your phone. Is there any way you could check out Instagram? He's like, yeah, but why? Like, what's going on? I'm like, dude, I think all my photos, my entire camera roll is being spit out on my Instagram account. And I could hear he didn't say anything at first. He just goes, he's like, hang on a second. So he flips over, and he's like, Chico, you haven't even posted anything yet. You have 0 posts on there. And I said, so you're not seeing my photos? And he goes, no. He goes, are you seeing your photos? I'm like, yeah, every one of them. He's like, well, it's probably, I think the idea is you can pick certain ones. And I go, but you're sure that you're not seeing? He goes, Chico, I got to go. I got kids crying. I'm in the Houston airport, for God's sake. My wife's now in a bad mood. I can't be messing with your Instagram paranoia and all. So that's that. So, yeah, I thought every picture, and I want to be clear, they are all of the PG variety, as far as you know. I thought every single one of them, including like my vital, social number and driver's license, all of that was being spread out, but it wasn't. So it was just a simple, it happened. There we go. It happened. We're going to plug it right back in. And would you look at that?
Look at that.
Man, we even moved the bottom cords, but we're back in business. So anyway, that was my night last night. In addition to watching drama, not only with the Cavaliers in Brooklyn, and on the good side of things with the Okoro 3, and we're going to be playing Rafa's clip throughout the afternoon. It's too good not to. But remember what I was saying? Almost boasting. It was damn near boasting. Like, if you would have just tuned in and heard me talking about last night's Sweet 16 games, previewing them somewhat, you would have been like, wow, that Chico guy, he seems to really know what he's talking about. He's talking about, what was he saying? He was talking about Tennessee being, men amongst boys when they knocked off Duke, and FAU, it's been nice, but your run's going to end. And then he said Gonzaga's defense is not good enough. And and UCLA is, even though they're banged up, they're gonna win. That one might not even be close. And then we decided, like Big Dave said, all right, I'll tell you what, you clowns, you guys pick a game that with the spread, with our spreads from our good buddies at Tipico, and whatever you pick, I'll take the opposite. If I lose, I'm bringing everybody lunch. So I'm feeling good, right? I had Arkansas. They were getting 4 points, I believe. Knowing full well, I wasn't saying that UConn was not a good team. They're a great team. We had Terrence Oglesby on earlier. He loved them. Now he's looking even better because he said they are a team that he thinks could win it all. Arkansas is like down by 30 in the blink of an eye.
At halftime, it was ugly.
And I'm like, oh, man. And basically what last night did, now Kansas State also won, and more on Marquise Noel in a second. But what last night did for me, and should for you, reinforce the idea that the less you know or the less you watch college basketball, and I'm not kidding when I say this, the greater chance you have of winning your bracket. But I'm telling you, it is tried and true. It has been tested over and over again. I used to be, like, as a kid growing up, of course, ate up sports. I would get the USA Today, the preview edition for the NCAA tournament. I would literally go through and, like, have it on the on the dining room table with my bracket on top of that, looking at every matchup, poring over 3 hours to do a bracket, for God's sake. And would never, but I'm like, hey, it's just bad luck. I had a few good years. I've only won a bracket one time, and it was the year that Syracuse, with Mello and Jerry McNamara and company, won it in 2003, I think that was. That's it. Every other time, I'm usually like middle of the pack, nothing great. It truly reinforces the idea. Like, everybody has it in their office, right? Everybody has the guys or gals, usually it's the blowhard dudes, who are in the office like, oh, yeah, I'll tell you, I watched a lot of UCLA this year, and they're going to that's the team right there, Arizona, and watch out for, I'm telling you, my sleeper pick, watch out for Princeton. Yeah, they're gonna do really well. And so, they're kind of showing off a little bit. And then you've got the people in the office, guys or gals, that really they haven't seen any college basketball at all this year. And I think more and more people are just, even college basketball fans will wait until the season or the tournament begins before they really start watching. Maybe conference tournaments, but they usually don't start in like non-conference in December or anything like that. But the people in the office that do it by, oh, well, my friend Lynn, her daughter goes to FAU. I'll take FAU. Those are the people that have the greatest chance of winning an office pool. And here we go again. UCLA, gone. Tennessee, gone. Arkansas, gone. And, I mean, these are, obviously it was Sweet 16, so they weren't incredible upsets, although FAU would qualify. Absolutely would qualify. Is Princeton going to keep it up tonight against Creighton? All I can say is, whatever I tell you, whatever you hear me say, and those who have listened to me over the years, first of all, God bless you, and I appreciate you. But like, I usually give that disclaimer. If I am really, really high on a prediction, I could have stopped after really, really high. I'm not really, really high. You would have thought I was last night with what was spewing out of my mouth. But you got something there, Nick?
With the phone call that I got.
Oh, that's right. I forgot. Nick, you got dragged into it too on the Instagram. Nick's busy working at home, and he's like, Chico, everything good? Not really. I think my pics are being spread out all over the web. All right, Chico, I'll talk to you tomorrow. Much like my buddy Brian did in Houston. I got kids to worry about. Chico, just do your thing. So whenever I it sounds like I know what I'm talking about, which I very rarely do. I just, I like to have fun, and I can be self-deprecating about it. That's when you should go the opposite route, okay? Don't take any, and not that any of you do, but certainly don't take anything I say as gospel, because it just ain't. And last night was a perfect example. So it's the opposite. Remember the opposite, the Seinfeld episode, the opposite? And for those of you who are new to listening to me, know that I am a Seinfeld fanatic. I love Seinfeld. A lot of the episodes and lines I'll repeat. But the opposite one, where George is like, he's really having, a deep dive into his life. And he's like, none of this stuff has ever worked for me. Jerry, if I'm gonna do something with my life, I got to change everything and just do the opposite. So instead of, remember they're in the cafe, he's like, instead of tuna on wheat, toasted with coffee, I'm gonna have chicken on rye, untoasted with tea. And he orders it, and then Elaine's like, George, that girl at the bar is looking at you. And he looks up, and it's a very attractive blonde. He walks up to her because he's like, at first he goes, Elaine, girls like that are not attracted to bald men, short, stocky bald men sitting in the booth with their friends. They're just not. Jerry goes, well, this is a perfect opportunity to test out your theory. Do the opposite. So George walks up to Victoria. He goes, hi, my name is George. I'm unemployed and I live with my parents. And she turns around. She's like, I'm Victoria. Hi. It's essentially that's what you're looking at with me. Just do the opposite. George, when he lands the Yankees job, George Steinbrenner. Hey, it's nice to meet you. Yeah, I wish I could say the same. Over the last 20 years, it's hard to see the logic in all these crazy moves. You have put us through hell as Yankee fans, and all for the glorification of your massive ego. Steinbrenner's like, hire this man. So that is where we're at with me spewing words about the NCAA tournament. We'll do it again. Tonight we've got San Diego State and Alabama, Miami and Houston, Princeton and Creighton, and Xavier in Texas. But it's one thing to be wrong on one game, but I was wrong, very wrong on 3 of the 4. Now, Kansas State knocked off Michigan State 98-93 in overtime. Nick, did you have a chance to watch Marquise Noel?
Absolutely took over that fourth quarter. That no-look pass, the highlight that's going viral out there on Twitter right now, where he's arguing with the coach and then throws a lob up to his teammate. Man, that kid is what March is all about.
Did you see the presser afterwards? They're like, can you tell us if that was planned? And he's like, well, I don't know how I should answer that. But you start to wonder because the coach is like, well, obviously they're all looking at every player should be looking at Marquise if you're defending that team because, he's the one making it happen. So they're all looking at Marquise, who's looking at his coach, and then he flips that pass inside. One of 19 assists he had on the night to go along with 20 points. And by the way, that 19 assists, 19 dimes, is a new NCAA tournament record for assists in a game. I have decided, as we got ready for the tournament this week, we were talking about old school players. For me growing up, some of my favorite guys that weren't necessarily on my favorite team. I mean, Jim Jackson's probably my all-timer. Being a Buckeye, but Wayman Tisdale with Oklahoma and Chris Mullen, and I did Jerry McNamara with Syracuse, is a little bit older then, but a lot of those old school guys I really enjoyed and were one of my all-time favorites in the history of the tournament. Marquise Noel is now in that territory. Think about what he did against Kentucky. He scored 27 points. I think 23 of those 27 came in the second half. And this is after John Calipari referred to him as little guy. They got a great little guy there. Coach, don't do that. He's 5'8", 5'7", 5'8". The guy can shoot. The guy can dish. I mean, he does everything. And because he's even shorter and because he's shorter than most, it gets even more attention. But this guy, you talk about a maestro, you talk about a catalyst, whatever term you want to use, that is Marquise Noel. Easily creeping into that conversation as one of the NCAA tournament's best and favorites, I think, all time. And that was an incredible effort, OT win Kansas State had over Michigan State. All right, 216-626-7901. Again, 216-626-7901. So I want to pass this along. As I said, we're going to be talking Browns coming up top of the hour with our buddy Brad Ward, and we're going to be getting into Browns here in a minute. But we have, don't you know, Nick Padone, an autographed Brian Sipe jersey.
How about that?
The great number 17. Autographed Brian Sipe jersey giveaway. Now, you have to follow the show on Twitter, if you're not already, at Chico Show CLE, to find the giveaway, retweet that giveaway, and then subscribe to the Chico Borman Show on YouTube. See, there's a few steps here. We're not just going to, you got to do a little bit of work, right? You got to do a little bit of work. So, again, follow at Chico Show CLE on Twitter to find the giveaway, retweet that giveaway, then subscribe to the Chico Borman Show on YouTube to win. Running this giveaway all week. We'll announce the winner on next Friday's show. Brian Sipe, 80 MVP, and when you think about, I mean, coming out of, he went to San Diego State, I think, or San Diego. Nobody really, I mean, he wasn't a big guy, wasn't really that big, wasn't very highly touted, but cardiac kids and everything that he meant to that team and that city. So be listening, and your chance to get in there and get that Brian Sipe jersey. So a lot to get to, as we said. Cavaliers nearing the end of the season. Another big win over Brooklyn, this time with plenty of drama. Let's go fire it up. Let's fire up Rafa again. Isaac Okoro, 0.7 of a second. He drills it from the corner, and Rafa, who, of course, co-hosts with Daniel Gibson on Boobies World, Rafa on the Spanish radio broadcast, which is just phenomenal. And he has continued to do this for many, many years across many, many platforms and for pretty much every major sport. Here's Rafa last night with the call for Isaac Okoro.
Pues falla Mitchell, recoge el rebote. Uy, ay, ay, Guy. Mitchell, ¿qué pasó con eso? La tienen todavía los Cavs. Caris la ve con la pelota para Okoro, que lanza el triple en la esquina. ¡Sí! 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 ¡Isaac Okoro! Acaba de darle la ventaja a los Cavs con 0.7 de segundo en el reloj. ¡Qué barbaridad!
He's an institution. He is an absolute institution. But that was Rafa's call. Cavs win again last night. Evan Mobley. I know Donovan Mitchell had 31, and I know Chris Manning kind of shot me down when I said, would I feel better? We probably have that clip somewhere. That might have to come out at some point, because Chris Manning, with the Locked On Cavs podcast and Fear the Sword, I said, and it's not that I don't love Donovan. Donovan Mitchell's incredible. Donovan Mitchell was a godsend. He wanted to be here, grew up a Cavs fan. He's great with the fans, a great teammate, and oh, by the way, he can fill it up. But if there's one thing, if you want one guy to take the shot to win the game right now, who would it be? And I think everybody would say Donovan Mitchell, and that's fine, but I might just go Evan Mobley. And you say, come, this dude is so young. He's barely, last night he had 26 and 16, I think. He doesn't change expression. He doesn't get rattled. I mean, he's incredible. He's incredible. But Mobley with a great game. Donovan Mitchell, as I said, with 31 points and the Cavaliers beat Brooklyn as we're now, six games left? Half dozen, I think, for the until the end of the season. Then we get ready for what should be they're on a collision course, the Cleveland Cavaliers and the New York Knicks in the first round of the NBA playoffs. So more on that to come. Obviously, more NCAA. And should we venture into these waters, or did we learn our lesson? Look, I'm dragging you down with me, Nick. Nick's like, wait a minute, you're the one that was talking all the garbage yesterday.
Chico, trust me, I've been dragged down plenty. I haven't won a bet in what feels like this entire tournament, so I'm here for whatever, man.
Okay, so the 4 games tonight, San Diego State against Alabama. Bama is a 7.5-point favorite. Bama to me looks kind of like UConn right about now. Like Bama is. They are, which means they're probably going to get knocked off tonight. Bama, as far as being balanced, Bama, as far as, being able to play D in addition to be able to score the basketball at will, 7.5-point favorite. Miami against Houston. Jimmy Larinaga can flat out coach it. So can Calvin Sampson. Houston is a 7.5-point favorite. So the first 2 games of the night, San Diego State and Bama, Miami and Houston, both 7.5-point spreads. Bama and Houston the favorites in that one. The 2 late games, Princeton and Creighton. Creighton is giving 10 points. Now they're a great basketball team. Creighton is very, very good. Princeton, yeah, the style, like they're one of those teams. We talked about it with from the Missouri game, and really it speaks for any game with Princeton. If they get a lead on you, it's going to be awfully difficult. Because if you try to hurry it up, if you try to get quick, and if you're trying to throw up shots to cut a deficit, they're gonna kill you. You're playing right into their hands. But I don't know if I think Princeton's going to win, but 10 points seems like a lot in that game. And then the final one. The Texas Longhorns, who I have as my national champ, I think the only one left still in my Final Four. Texas is a 4.5-point favorite over Xavier. That's the late game, 3-2 in that one. So we won't do it right now, but is there one that stands out to you, Nick, of those 4 games that you – because I'm actually going to let you do it this time. I'm not.
Oh, no.
Yeah, no, you can't do any worse than I did last night. I mean, that was as bad a performance as you could get. Because everything, it wasn't just the pick in that one game, but like every game I talked about, like I said, the Costanza exact opposite happened. Victoria High.
I guess since I said it on Big Play Reflug on Monday, I've already taken a little bit of heat for it on Twitter today. Now that clip has come out and people are, saying, well, if Padone took it, bet the opposite. It's Bama 7.5. Alabama at this point now with UCLA being eliminated and some of the other teams that we've seen drop. You would think Bama is one of the best, if not the best school still in the tournament. So I guess Bama minus 7.5. I get that that's a big spread. I get that that's a lot of points. I think that's what we're gonna roll with tonight.
You like Bama covering?
Yeah.
Yeah. That might be. Yeah. That might not be a bad one at all. I was gonna say Creighton Princeton, and not like I said, not that I think Princeton's gonna pull the all-out upset. It wouldn't shock me if they did, but Creighton. 10 points is a lot. But, yeah, Bama, San Diego State, very, very good defensively. But Bama right now they're kind of like UConn. I mean, they're playing – it seems like they're playing – and Bama's road to the Final Four isn't exactly tough with how the bracket played out. They were already arguably in the easiest region going in the South. But Bama is looking a lot more like UConn every day. So – we'll see what happens, but at least preliminary, we're looking at Bama covering 7.5 over San Diego State. We'll see how that plays out.
That's what we're looking at. I don't know. Yeah, you would think that I should be confident in that, right? I mean, it's Bama. It's a 1 versus a 5. They've been the powerhouse all year, but with how those bets went yesterday, with how some of my tournaments bets have gone throughout the week, really throughout this whole month, I don't know, man.
See, I feel bad because if I think I put that thought in your head. What I did last night is you should feel confident in that Bama pick. I mean, I don't know,
man. I don't think it's you. Because I think I could log into my Tipico app right now and show the people just how many losing bet slips that I have on this phone. And I think you would feel a little bit better, Chico, about what happened yesterday on the show with your bad picks. If you just took a scroll through my Tipico Sportsbook app and saw just how many losers I've put in over these last 2 weeks. We got to get right. They say there's no time like the present. So I guess tonight we'll try again at 6:30 with that Alabama -7.5.
And we might. I'm just going to toss this idea out there.
All right.
I mean, I guess I'm already trying to make executive decisions, and I'm not even close to being executive. But how about a little? We throw a little parlay together after the show.
Yeah, I know.
Me, Dave.
I think it was discussed. Yeah, maybe we hop back on live tonight, maybe right before the show on Big Play for a little Big Play parlay show. You, me, Dave, kind of hop around the studio.
Do I get a voice really in that, or is that going to be one of those just Chico? Just sit there. You're a prop. We don't really want you to talk.
No, man, come on.
It's pretty bad.
We'll cook up a parlay because obviously now we have the games today, but then we, right away you got games starting up tomorrow with that Kansas State, Florida Atlantic, Gonzaga, and Connecticut. So I mean, we could cook this thing up, man.
Gonzaga, Connecticut's going to be pretty good too. All right, 216-626-7901. That's the number to get involved. Again, you can subscribe to the show on YouTube, Chico Borman Show on YouTube. Twitter at Chico Show CLE, and of course, bigplay.com. Coming up top of the hour, we're going to talk to Brad Ward. Follow him on Twitter at Ward on Sports. He covers the Browns. He does it very well. He's a contributor for the OBR, also host of the All Eyes on CLE podcast. He ran through some of the names still available as far as certainly defensive line. And look, you might say, wow, they've already added quite a few. And Andrew Berry, this is one of those things where you don't have to keep everybody, but the more numbers you get, hopefully you're going to find a couple guys in there that can be impact guys for Jim Schwartz. So it is a numbers game. You get as many in there, and you have a competition, but probably see more coming from the defensive line, whether it be in free agency, obviously the draft. The wide receiver position, though, you mentioned DJ Chark yesterday. There's a name that is on this list, and understand this, because I was the one that was kind of not ripping anybody, but certainly making it known that we get a little too excited with some of the wide receivers when everybody was looking to add Jerry Jeudy, and it seemed like, Wyatt Teller, you got to move him. Nick Chubb, yeah, no big deal. So they bring in Elijah Moore. I think it's a good deal. I'm not going to sit here and tell you like, oh my gosh, this guy's going to be a superstar. I do think last year Elijah Moore, that was a mess in New York. How else can you say it? Zach Wilson, a complete bust, and not just like, wow, he had some growing pains. I mean, like, not only was he bad on the field, his guys hated him, and they should. I mean, when you're in the locker room after a bad loss, when you throw 4 or 5 interceptions and turn the ball over right and left, and somebody poses a question of, hey, Zach, is there anything you felt you could have done differently, you would do differently in this game, looking back on it? And he goes, no. I mean, right then, like, these guys were like, okay, bud, you're done. I mean, just go, do whatever it is you do, which we know what he does. We don't need to bring it up again. Friends' moms and Stacy's mom. Isn't that a song? Stacy's mom has got it going on. Yeah, all right, we won't go any further with that. But that was a mess last year. So I've heard people say, Elijah Moore, he only had 1 touchdown last year. I'm not gonna put too much in the bank on that. His rookie season, 5 touchdowns. He was a second rounder out of Ole Miss. He's got talent. Now, I've also heard some people say, well, he's a bit of a head case. Again, I go back to last year in New York. The Jets were a colossal mess. And, now your coach is out. Your quarterback is done in Zach Wilson. And is it going to be Aaron Rodgers? And who knows? But for our purposes, for the move that Andrew Berry made, getting Elijah Moore, 2 years left on that rookie deal. He has, hopefully, we hope, an ideal situation catching passes from Deshaun Watson, who needs to get back to greatness, and we hope he does and think he will this season. He's not going to be your number one, Elijah Moore. So you've got him, kind of springboarding off. You've got Amari Cooper, David Bell, the youngster. There could be a few guys here that before it's all said and done that are on board. But Elijah Moore has talent. The veteran that intrigues me, and there's not a lot of good names here. Okay, there's a reason why guys like Jerry Jeudy are being brought up. There's a reason why DeAndre Hopkins keeps being brought up. Now, they are very good, but the free agent class is awful. I mean, it really is. Like, the free agent class, I don't say awful. That might be a bit of a stretch, but it leaves a lot to be desired. Some of these guys coming off the table. But there's one name that intrigues me, and I'm curious to hear what Brad Ward says at the top of the hour. He's not a spring chicken anymore, but I think in the right situation, we hope the Browns could be that situation. I think Marvin Jones Jr. is a guy that really intrigues me, Nick. Like, he's always been very talented. He's always had a nose for the end zone. Had the crazy year in Jacksonville when, Herb was doing whatever the hell he was on the dance floor and not coaching his team. But Marvin Jones Jr. to me, and when you're looking at young guys, we keep looking for leadership, right? We keep looking for, talk about getting Anthony Walker back on defense. Marvin Jones Jr. kind of intrigues me a little bit. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely one of the best options that are out there. And I'm with you in what you were saying. There's not a whole lot out there, but man, it's his 11th year in the league. Yeah, I got to wonder if that's something that Andrew Berry does, go after a guy that's going to be, he is 33 years old right now. I'm with you. I think he is a professional. I think the leadership is there. He's definitely been around the block and been in bad situations. We haven't really seen him in a good situation. Started his career off in Cincinnati, then went to Detroit through some of their down years. Again, in Jacksonville, maybe got a little taste of success last year. I don't think that that's a move. I don't think that's a direction Andrew Berry would necessarily go
because of his
age. Because you already got Elijah Moore, and then DPJ is still in that room. David Bell is still in that room. I don't think Berry's going to be willing to give up on him just yet for a guy like Marvin Jones.
Well, it might not even be. See, this is where I would say, and I understand your point, but I guess I would say, first off, it doesn't on paper look like something Andrew Berry would really be interested in because he's looking for the young guys. And the other thing, like I said, and I can't emphasize this enough, the other thing that made Elijah Moore very, very ideal and something that Andrew Berry was looking at was he's got 2 more years left on that rookie deal.
Yep. You're
right. Marvin Jones has been around a while. But I think, and last year, instead of looking at it, what you just said there to me is a bit of a microcosm of what really went wrong in Cleveland last year. One of the things. And I know the whole Deshaun mess and, all of that stuff. But if you bring in a guy like Marvin Jones and say, and I'm not saying this is true, and I know you're not either, but if you bring in a guy like Marvin Jones Jr., just as a veteran presence and maybe to help these guys a little bit, and a guy like, it wouldn't be David Bell, but a guy like Elijah Moore or another younger wide receiver is saying, "Huh, what the hell are they doing, man? No respect for me. I mean, you brought me in here. Either you drafted me or free agency. You want me here, and then you're going to bring this old guy in." That mindset, and I'm glad you said it like that, because that is something that permeated the locker room last year, and I think really had a negative impact on how they went about their business. And look no further. As much as we knew, or at least had an inkling, that Jadeveon Clowney wasn't exactly a team guy, I mean, that end of the year spat where he's like, well, all they care is, Miles' numbers and making Miles look good and putting Miles against guys that he can be. They're giving me what? And that's one of your leaders. I mean, he's not a leader, but he is a leader by default because, let's face it, Andrew Berry went after him not once, but twice. And while I like Andrew Berry, that's one that I think is going to haunt him a little bit. Now, let me be clear. Jadeveon Clowney, he had some production. But, A, you didn't know when it was coming. B, he was a guy that, practice really wasn't his thing. And now we're talking about, young guys on that defensive line, a Perion Winfrey. Guys like that, no. I know it's boring. I know we roll our eyes at these things. Like, well, what does culture mean? Or this guy's practicing hard, so I'm going to practice hard. It's not the sexy thing to talk about. But when the opposite is true, and it is without a doubt in your locker room, and you don't have the guys to quell that, you don't have the guys to put their foot down, it's a major, major issue. And I hope that attitude and that mindset is gone next year. Whether it's because Kevin Stefanski does something differently, whether it's because the guys you brought in or the guys that are here that should be more of a leader kind of step into that role a little bit more. I don't know. Like, that's one of the things I remember when Jarvis Landry and fans said, because Jarvis Landry was a fan favorite, and he should have been, and he will always be. But I remember thinking, with the price tag and not arguing, but getting into spirited debates with fans on Jarvis and saying, guys, we have to be realistic, okay? His price tag and what he's looking for, which was what, 12, 15, whatever it was. I'm like, you can't do that. And many of you called in and, ripped me and said, hey, he's a leader. And, what he brings to that locker room. And look, I'll be honest with you. I kind of poo-pooed that. I kind of said, yeah, he does. I'm not dismissing that he does, but it's not that important. Now, I still, $15 million or $12 million. But you need guys, and they need guys to just put all that crap, check your ego at the door. Check your ego at the door. If you're concerned about numbers, if you're concerned that somebody, I can't even say what Jadeveon Clowney thought about last year without laughing. Like, how stupid, how utterly dumb is it that Jadeveon Clowney's he's thinking in his mind, well, I bet they're putting Myles Garrett. They're giving him an easy matchup so he can, he's their boy, so he can shine. And then they're trying to, they don't want me to do well. What are you kidding? Like, that is, I don't even know how to describe that. Like, and this is a veteran, former number 1 draft pick, really a very talented player. That's really what he was thinking, and he believed that. Crazy.
Kind of sad, isn't it?
Very.
It's very sad that, Jadeveon Clowney, like you said, you were the number 1 overall pick. I mean, he went to where, SC? I mean, you were the absolute stud there, and now you've been passed around how many teams. We hear the same thing about you everywhere that you go. And it ends like that, so ugly. And there's a reason that he's out there every single year on that free agency market, because it's this kind of stuff like that he does. But to your point, Chico, I agree. They need more leaders, and I don't know where they find those from. Hopefully some of the guys that they got already this free agency, Juan Thornhill maybe could be a leader. Dalvin Tomlinson maybe could be a leader. I get that that's going to be difficult, coming in day one, new job for them, new settings.
Yeah.
Now I'm tasked with not only doing my job on the field, but leading in the locker room, off the field, saying the right thing in press conferences. It's a tall task.
And I don't know, admittedly, 216-626-7901, you want to chime in here on the Chico Borman Show on the Big Play Network. I can't sit here and tell you what exactly, like, a leader should say or do. Like, again, Nick Chubb is the ultimate professional, the ultimate leader. He's not vocal, though. I think you need somebody that's going to... And maybe it happens, but they're not going to get the benefit of the doubt after last year. Maybe that was going on, but whoever was doing it, their message was falling on deaf ears. Because somebody should have been telling guys like Perion Winfrey and no, this isn't how we operate. John Johnson coming over. I continue to say it. He was okay. He was just okay. But they're paying you $11 million a year. They bring you in, and okay, maybe the scheme didn't match up and you didn't agree with everything Joe Woods did, fine. At the very least, you don't contribute to the finger pointing. Go back to, was it the year before when he was questioning the offensive play calling?
He was at home with COVID, and he tweeted, "Run the damn ball."
That was the Green Bay game. Yeah. I mean, what are you doing? Like, that's not even up for discussion. You can't have somebody like that.
Chico, I know top of the hour we have Brad Ward coming on, but I do want to pose you this while we have some time, while we wait for Brad. Shouldn't the head coach kind of always be your leader? Shouldn't that be the guy that, whether things are going really well, we're not going to fill our own craniums, as Bernie would say, with this nonsense, with this, we're better than everybody. We're not going to read our own press clippings. And then when things are going bad, when things are going south, isn't that the guy that should kind of grab everybody by the reins and pull them back in? And I think there's a lot of people out there on Twitter and elsewhere throughout this Browns fandom stratosphere that are wondering, well, shouldn't that be Kevin Stefanski doing some of that leading?
Yeah. It should, and I get this a lot too. In response to what I said about the players, are like, well, hey, that's Kevin Stefanski's job. I'm not going to argue that. You're right. But I think if any organization, like Belichick, yes, he set the, this is how it's going to be. But he brought guys in then that were his mouthpiece. And, look no further. I mean, it's no secret. The reason that they were able to succeed as long as they did for many of these great players, but when your quarterback, who's arguably the best to ever play, is being called out in film sessions, and, he's being told, I can get somebody at Foxborough High to make that pass, Brady, and, nobody is immune to criticism. And I wonder... I guess that's where I would say that, yes, Kevin Stefanski, everybody has to look in the mirror. But I think that the only way you can have it truly work is if you have guys in that locker room, players on that field, that also take it just as seriously. Like Kevin Stefanski, what's interesting about Stefanski is we go back to that COVID year, and he was praised for what? Boy, he's calm, he's cool, he's collected. He knows how to engage everybody, keep everybody engaged, and bring everybody together. And so everything that we praised him for, I mean, he's not a rah-rah guy, right? You're not going to see him throwing water coolers and all that stuff. I just the thought of him throwing one kind of makes me want, I almost want to see
I'm curious.
Yeah.
I'm curious. I would love to see the headset go up into the, third row just once. It would be kind of fun.
Yeah, that would be. But to your point, yes, he needs to be, maybe Jim Schwartz on the defensive side is going to be that guy that, like, before we start finger pointing or if guys are taking plays off or practices, like, you start to play how you practice. And, well, if I hear, and I wasn't there, so I'm not going to sit here and act like I saw the practice every day, but if a guy like Jadeveon Clowney isn't practicing and then Perrin Winfrey doesn't want to be there and Perrin Winfrey's getting suspended and, you had all sorts of stuff going on that I just you play how you practice. And I would be willing to bet that in Berea, it could have been a much tougher place. It could have been and I know there's something to, it's 2023. I almost said 2024. It's 2023. And, hey, the athlete's not the same. They haven't grown up the same. They haven't been coached the same. So there is something to getting through these guys and being able to get through guys. And that's, look, I'm being dead serious when I say this. You can talk X's and O's all day long. Half the battle is that, being able to relate to them and get through it however you need to do it. That's what makes the special coaches just that, special. But there's a fine line. I tell you what, we're gonna step aside because I'm really, as far as Brad Ward's concerned, I'm really curious to hear what he has to say on this. I mean, we're going through all these different names, and he's got the list of everybody the Browns have signed and guys that are still available and where they might be. And I just wonder if he's going to say, yeah, all this talent is great, and hopefully these guys are going to pan out, and they're going to fit the roles that Jim Schwartz and others need them to. But ultimately, is chemistry, is the player, is the person being factored in here? Because I think that kind of went by the wayside over the last couple of seasons. All right, we'll step aside and we'll take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to get hooked up with Brad Ward. He is with the OBR, also host of the All Eyes on Clee podcast. So stick around for that. Hour 2 of the Chico Borman Show rolling along. It's all right here on the Big Play Network. Don't go anywhere. All righty, welcome back. Hour 2 of the Chico Borman Show here on Big Play Network. Glad to have you along on this TGI Friday. Where can you find the show? YouTube, and subscribe by clicking on the Chico Borman Show. Twitter, at Chico Show, CLE, and, of course, BigPlay.com. All right, we're talking some Browns, got into a little free agency and kind of the offseason. I wouldn't even say that. Free agency, yeah, but just kind of the state of the Browns and going back to last year. And my next guest is going to help me do that. He's one of the best in the business and one of the really good guys in the business. Brad Ward, who you can follow on Twitter at Ward on Sports. He's a contributor for the OBR. He's also the host of the All Eyes on Cleveland. That's, I should say, All Eyes on Cle. And the S is a Z. Actually, if we bring him in, you can see behind him. Look, I think he's got the marketing stuff going on behind him in the background. So yeah, he knows what he's doing. He knows what's up. Brad, it is great to talk to you, buddy. And it's been it's been a busy off season so far. Much is on the horizon. But how you doing, pal?
I'm doing great. I'm honored to be here, Chico. This is fantastic. It's great to hear your voice again, and it makes me happy to be on the air with you here. So thanks for having me.
Well, our pleasure, my pleasure, and thanks for the kind words. It's you are one of those guys. I was saying to Nick and Dave before the show, like you're one of the grinders as far as on the Browns beat and always with great information. Again, with OBR and then of course the podcast. So I'll start general with you. We'll get more specific here in a moment, but just the $1 million question that you get asked all the time. Your first impressions of the Browns offseason to date.
I think they have been fiscally responsible in signing good talent. I think that they have addressed all of their needs. So Okoro is a good signing. It's somebody that kind of we had targeted at the OBR. A lot of people liked last year, thought he was going to have a breakout last year. Slow start, came on strong at the end of the year. I think them signing him to a multi-year deal is fantastic because you're getting like an ascending player there, right? And then lining up opposite Myles Garrett, it's going to open up a whole other world for him. So, that is a great signing. Tomlinson addresses an obvious need. They had to pay a lot of money there. Obviously, as that defensive tackle market has kind of exploded a little bit this offseason. And then, I like Juan Thornhill a lot. He's the kind of the guy that I wanted. He fits, right? He's your John Johnson was I hear a lot of people, Chico, going, oh, it's a 1-for-1, talent-wise. And maybe so, but fit-wise, Thornhill is much better. He's he's going to take better angles on the back end. He's a true post safety. He's kind of that center fielder. And you can let Delpit do what he's better at up near the box, right? And, where John Johnson, they just kind of never really used him correctly, right? He was this stud with the Rams, and they just used him improperly in Cleveland, in my opinion. And he didn't do himself any favors either. He's been caught a few times on tape making some business decisions, I think, late. But
That's a
yeah,
good way to put it. I like that.
Yeah. So I like all those signings, and I really like Elijah Moore. I wanted when there was rumors of Elijah Moore prior to this, and then they were kind of like, no, that's not going to happen with him. I'm really glad it came to fruition because, nobody's going to be like, oh, wow, Elijah Moore now. But if I urge you to go to the OBR and watch Jake Burns' tape film review. He is fantastic. For a guy that's 5'10", 180 pounds, he's tough. He doesn't get knocked off his routes. He runs incredibly crisp routes. He's got a ton of twitch. This is a guy that can find... I don't think Stefanski has had a guy like him in his offense since he's been here. So I think he opens up a lot. He's going to stress defenses vertically. And that's something they need badly, right, on that offensive day. It changes the way the teams have to defend you. So I really like the Moore signing. Now, it feels incomplete to me. Walker coming back is great. And you guys were talking about leadership. I think Walker is a big part of that, right? We heard some clamoring from teammates like, we need our leader back, right? So they bring Walker back, and that helps. But it's incomplete for me. Because I think, like, on the offensive line, Chico, you're like one injury away from rolling out the same guys you rolled out last year, right? Tomlinson gets hurt. All of a sudden, you're starting Jordan Elliott and Perrion Winfrey up the middle again, and we're in the same spot. I know they're going to throw Tristan Hill and Maurice Hurst at the situation, and I get that, but those guys are kind of lotto tickets. So we'll see. I don't think they should be done up front is where I'm at.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I don't think they are at all. And I saw you had a list again on OBR of some available players, which we'll get to in a moment. But before we do that, I want to go back to the defensive line. You mentioned some of those younger guys, and, well, if there's an injury, you're throwing the same guys out there. We had all heard over the last couple of years, hey, Jordan Elliott's he's finally looking good, and Tommy Togiai. So how much of this is these guys just not being as talented as we thought, and how much is, you mentioned it with John Johnson, obviously on the back end. Well, he didn't fit with what Joe Woods, whatever it was he wanted to do. He didn't fit with that. How do you differentiate that?
It's tough, right? The one thing that I think Joe Woods failed on big time, Chico, is he was very poor at defining roles for these guys. I feel like it's like, some coaches are really good at saying, okay, Perrion, you're really good at this. We're going to use you for just focus on this, right? And we'll put you in that situation and you can do it well. But instead they see a talented Perrion Winfrey or Joe Woods did, and he asked him to do everything in his rookie year, right? And it was overwhelming for him. Jordan Elliott, kind of the same thing. Like, there's a couple things that he's really good at. There's a role for that, but he's not an every down defensive tackle. So I think that Jim Schwartz will define those roles better for them. And I think you'll see some development there. One thing that's really tough in the NFL, and I keep talking about it, and I keep seeing mock drafts. I'm sure you see them too, Chico, where they got Mozzie Smith, defensive tackle, getting mocked to the Browns. And I know their draft pick has changed now, so it's not really possible at 74. But when they were at 42, or a defensive tackle, whoever, right, signed mocked to them. I hate the idea of drafting a defensive tackle at this point, because these guys, it just takes them a couple years. Like, you just don't get results right away from defensive tackles in the draft. Their body has to change. The NFL game is completely different, and it just is a process. Even first rounders, you see, sometimes it takes them a couple years to get acclimated to the NFL before you see results. So I'm a fan of them addressing it in free agency more, because basically I don't think Stefanski has time to wait for anybody to develop. He's got to win this year, right? He's got to win now and to save his job. So I do think that Schwartz will help the guys on the roster with defining some roles for them, but I'm not overwhelmed by anything I've seen from Jordan Elliott. Now, Winfrey, I think, has some potential there for sure. He's a talented guy, but it's kind of like up here, right? Great uniform, bad helmet so far. So let's get that straightened out, right?
I like that. Brad Ward, you can follow him on Twitter at Ward on Sports. He's also, as you know, a contributor with the OBR, does a great job there, and has a podcast, All Eyes. That's all EYEZ on CLE. So is it safe to say, because you said that with a few players, that Joe Woods, he had guys that did a couple things well, but he wanted him to do all sorts of things. We also heard early in the season, and I don't want to spend too much time on last year, but I guess what I think we all want to decipher is there talent that just hasn't been utilized, or are they really, are they really struggling in that area? So we heard that Joe Woods threw a lot at these guys very early, and that they just never seemed to pick it up. And we heard, well, maybe he's going to scale it back a little bit. Is that kind of what you heard as well, and they just never really got on the same page?
Yeah, and then I heard that as well, and then kept hearing, Joe Woods say, like, boy, I wish we could do more, but I just feel like we can't, at this point because of all the breakdowns they had early in the season. And it was frustrating to hear from your defensive coordinator because you want to see them do more, right? Like, I can't blame it all on Joe Woods. Like,
Sure.
It can put some of this at the feet of Joe Woods, but some of this goes to Andrew Berry as well. And I don't know, like last offseason, if they just totally bought into the whole, like, I think everybody thought Chico in 2022 NFL was going to be high-flying, high-scoring. If we invite teams to run, that's going to be a benefit to us, right? Like, as long as it's not to our detriment. So they kind of didn't address defensive tackle as much as they should have, and it backfired on them. Teams ran the ball more than expected. It was lower scoring than expected, and teams did run the ball to their detriment against their defense. They had nobody up front. So I think that's on a miscalculation on Andrew Berry's part, I think, last offseason, as far as addressing defensive tackle. And that's an analytics thing, right? That's what the analytics told us, is that, and a lot of times it guides them in the right way, but I think it was a miscalculation in that way. As far as the talent goes, I think Winfrey has talent. I don't think Togiai has talent. I don't think he's made out for the NFL. I haven't seen any glimpses really of anything that to salvage there. Jordan Elliott, it's worth a try, right? You got him one more year on his rookie deal. He could be like defensive end 4, I think would be a great spot for him. But right now he's probably defensive end 2, and that's what I mean by like incomplete, right? So that's where I'm at kind of with that interior defensive line. They need another edge too, right? Like Alex Wright, same thing, like huge guy, got a ton of talent, but in space, he's a disaster, Chico. So, I thought he took better reps when they kicked him inside more than he did on the edge, to be honest. But he can't be the Browns' defensive end number 3 come September, right? Like, they need another. Okoro has never played more than 500 snaps. So if you're expecting, Alex Wright to come in and play 700 snaps, he had a PFF grade of 33 last year. That's not ideal, right? So I think they need another body there. I like Frank Clark and Carlos Dunlap are some names that are intriguing there, I think. But I think they need to add another body there too, to be honest.
Okay, so we'll get back into all of this in just a moment, but we got some breaking news. You talked about guys that are still available, defense, offense. We've heard the name Marquise Goodwin quite a bit. Kind of died down a little bit the last day or so. It appears that he will be joining the Browns. Your initial thoughts on Marquise Goodwin of the Browns?
That's interesting. I kind of thought that was out the window after the Elijah Moore, because basically they are, same body type. Goodwin ran like a sub 4.340 in his combine, but he's 32 years old now. So I don't know. I doubt he still runs that same 40 time. Very good, short space, quick guy. But my concern here is now that you're adding, similar bodies. Like, the reason why I liked Elijah Moore so much is because he's different than Donovan Peoples-Jones, and he's different than Amari Cooper, and he brings something different. Now you're kind of overloading that position where I don't really want to take away reps from David Bell. So maybe David Bell can beat out Marquise Goodwin, and maybe he's just a security blanket. I liked the idea a lot more before they signed Elijah Moore. But we'll see. They're very similar guys, though. One's just aged, and one is still ascending.
Brad Ward joining us on the program. All right, so you mentioned Andrew Berry, and I want to I know it's not the sexy thing to talk about or write about because, you're looking, like you said, you're plugging guys in and who, who can contribute right away and can Juan Thornhill, be that center field and free safety and ball hawk and other positions. But I think by and large, I've been very complimentary of Andrew Berry, and I think that's somewhat justified. But I go back to last year, and I go back to one guy in particular because I think what he said at the end of the year in the episode that played out kind of epitomized what the Browns were all about. And you're shaking your head. You know exactly where I'm going with this. So Andrew Berry, look, Jadeveon Clowney's a very talented guy. He's very, very talented, former number 1 pick in the draft. When he wants to play, that's important to say, we'll say it again. When he wants to play, hell, when he wants to practice too, he can be great. So Andrew Berry, I mean, he was hot to trot for this guy. You had him 1 year, and then you pursued him again. And I feel like as much as you preach tough, smart, accountable, that's a guy that comes in, everybody knows the GM is high on him, and he was anything but, in my opinion, tough, smart, accountable. Do the Browns need to go back, and Andrew Berry specifically, and really make that a focal point that, yes, okay, look, you're not getting choir boys and they're going to win in the NFL, but is character and that sort of leadership going to be emphasized now, you think, with Andrew Berry?
I hope so, and they've said that, right? They said that this offseason, they want to put an emphasis on, winning pedigree and some character guys, right? And I think Dalvin Tomlinson is a good character guy, and I think that Thornhill certainly brings some winning pedigree, 2 Super Bowls, right? So that's fine. I agree, though, that a lot of, like, when you look at Jadeveon, like, a lot of that feels like, wow, Andrew Berry is great at accumulating talent, but how good is he at actually building a team, right? Like, there's a difference between accumulating a bunch of talent.
Is the jury still out on that one?
I feel like it is a little bit. Like, let's say, Jarvis kind of held things together for a while. He was like the one-man, like, heart of the team, right? And I don't even know if I put it so much on Andrew Berry as it's a question about Kevin's messaging, Stefanski's messaging. Like, I think he gets buy-in, but, like, Myles Garrett's never been a guy that's cool with, like, being at the forefront of leading this defense, right? And at times he has been a leader and said the right things, like last year about Perion Winfrey. He was talking about how he needs to be more of a professional and whatnot. But, like, he really hasn't been that guy. So who is that? I don't know. That's one of the biggest questions, right? Like, you can add all the talent in the world, but if it doesn't come together and you don't have buy-in, and you can't put it all on the coach, but, like, you need to have lieutenants too. Like, it has to come from the players on down too, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's a messaging structure. And I don't know that was there last year at all. Obviously, with the Jadeveon Clowney thing, clearly wasn't executed very well. If he was getting away with, only playing on third downs or whatever Chris Kiffin's story was at the time, right? So I guess I would say that the jury is still out on both of them creating a team that has character and leadership, and that, last year's team was hard to like.
Absolutely right. 100% right. Yeah. Matter of fact, it's so funny you say that because I was talking to somebody a couple weeks ago, and just something in general about, hey, what do you think of this acquisition? And this guy who is a diehard Browns fan, he responded with, maybe it'll get the juices flowing. It probably will as we get closer to the season. But and it wasn't all just Deshaun and because, some people are going to have that opinion, and that's fair. That's what the Browns signed up for. But he said it wasn't all of that. It was just, in general, that was kind of the attitude was like everybody's out for themselves. And like I said, when Jadeveon Clowney is paranoid, thinking that guys, I mean, that they are scheming to make Myles Garrett look good and him look bad. It's like, are we in 7th grade? I mean, what is this? So, yeah, you're right. And I think a lot of people feel that way. They were not a team that was easy to like.
Yeah, and that has to change, right? Like a lot of the thing, the pointing of fingers, all of the nonsense. Like I felt like Joe Woods lost his job early last year, and they just didn't really have anybody that they, what was the point at that point of changing to somebody else? Although it does sometimes make a difference to get, maybe if they would have gone to Tarver and gotten a voice, sometimes you can get a couple game bump out of that change, right, on that unit. But, the miscommunication, the pointing of fingers, this constant, between Delpit and Newsome on the missed assignments in the secondary, all of that stuff, nobody wants to hear that. That's not what Stefanski is constantly talking about, right? Like, it's all, for him, he wants it all behind doors, closed doors, right? He wants everything to happen back there and nothing to come out. And you saw that kind of crumble at the end of the year with, the defensive backs coach at the time with that, idiotic interview where he talked about how he couldn't adjust to the Bengals receivers not playing. And then Chris Kiffin, of course, exposing everything that happened with Jadeveon Clowney. I'm sure Kevin wasn't happy about that, but I think they probably kind of sensed that they were all kind of on their way out. But, they need to have character guys that buy in and then message the rest of the way through. And I think Myles tries to do that, but he's not willing to be like the guy with the flag running out of the tunnel right first. Like it'll be like maybe the 5th guy out or whatever. I think Juan Thornhill can bring some leadership. I think Dalvin Tomlinson can bring some leadership. We're talking about, Tomlinson especially, a veteran who's been there a long time, done it. If you heard his interview, he's a terrific guy. He sounds like has a very interesting story. So I think these guys are character guys. It's just got to all come together. Like, you can have the best football team in the world, but until it all clicks and meshes and you're one unit and they become likable because they are tough and they're not taking plays off and there is no more finger pointing, then they're not going to be any good. So that has to change, obviously. And I honestly think the biggest factor there, Chico, will be Jim Schwartz. He's kind of an ass kicker. He's going to come in there, and I expect him to do just that. He complements Kevin's demeanor very well, as he is kind of the opposite.
So we talk about all of this stuff, and it's all very, very relevant. When it comes to Deshaun Watson, I mean, look, I kind of scoffed at the idea, and I know some fans were upset with me that, a guy's going to miss 700 days or whatever it was, and it's just going to immediately, walk into a phone booth, put on the Superman cape, walk out and throw for 400 yards and 5 touchdowns. That said, it definitely wasn't very encouraging. I think, we can kid ourselves about, the defense needs to do this and hopefully, the offensive line can continue to do well and wide receivers, hopefully Elijah Moore. If Deshaun Watson doesn't become Deshaun Watson from 2019, 2020, whatever, all of this might be moot, right?
It is. I would agree that we have all these conversations, but it really comes down to whether Deshaun can be Deshaun again, and that is it, right? Like, if he is not, then none of this stuff really matters. But the one thing that I kind of think that makes this year a little different is, like, I think he can get back to the player that he was, but it may be like a crawl to walk to run type of situation, right? Like, he may not come out week 1 and be the guy that is the $230 million version of him, right? Like, he may be like the $100 million version of him and then have to work his way up to that point. even though he had the 6 games at the end of last year and we saw glimpses, but it wasn't great. And they've left a lot of breadcrumbs that they're going to be making big changes in this offense, right? So I think they're going to give him every opportunity to do in the offense what he's comfortable with, what he wants to do. He's going to have a large say in that. I think they're going to throw it a lot more. But I still think it may take him a couple weeks into the season to get, or maybe even half the season, to get to the best version of Deshaun Watson. So for that reason, like you hear a lot of people, Chico, say, hey, we don't need wide receiver. We have Watson. He's supposed to elevate all these players, right? Well, okay.
Throw him open.
Yeah. Let me see it first, and then we can say, okay, he can elevate these wide receivers. But I'd like to see him play at that level first. And this is a year where you don't really have any wiggle room because I don't really trust the Haslams or anybody to go out and find a better coach than Kevin Stefanski. So I'd like him to keep his job personally.
Yeah.
So I'd like them to win and find a way to win. And I think in order to do that, you probably need to be a playoff team, and Deshaun has to probably play really well. So, and it's more like, I think we'll see that in the second half of the season, but I'll be glad that they have some extra weapons this year for the first half of the season, right? While he's figuring it out. It's you're asking a lot for him, even after the 6 games and a full off season, to come back week 1 and just be the guy again. It's going to take some time, I think.
All right, last thing for you. Again, we're talking to Brad Ward with OBR and, of course, the host of the All Eyes on Clee podcast. You can follow him on Twitter at Ward on Sports. Is there a name that you're hearing? You're clued in. You're plugged in. Is there a name you're hearing, much like we just announced that Marquise Goodwin, if you're just tuning in, Marquise Goodwin signing with the Browns, another wide receiver to the mix. Is there a name that you think could be on the horizon for the Browns? And if not, that's okay too. But just wanted to get some of that inside scoop if you got any, Brad.
I don't know how much of an inside scoop it is. It's a name that has a little bit of buzz behind it right now. I keep hearing it mentioned. Is Frank Clark, who I think would be, he's a Cleveland guy. He could serve that. He could give you that 500 additional snaps off the edge, and he brings some of that leadership and winning pedigree as well. So I think that would be a smart signing and one that makes a lot of sense.
What kind of money do you think he'd be looking at?
What's that?
What kind of money you think he'd be looking at?
I don't forget what Spot Track or PFF had him at. He probably on a 1-year deal. The longer we go, the cheaper he'll probably get. But I don't know, like $7 to $10 million, maybe.
Okay. For that, I was wondering if it would be a little bit north of that. I think that seems about right, but I don't know what he would be asking for.
I think Spot Track had him at like 12.4, but I would imagine that the market has come down a little bit on that because he didn't go in the first wave. You know what I mean? Now a lot of these guys like to wait and they want to play for a winner. So hopefully the Browns can present that front because I think they can. I'm actually doing a piece right now, Chico, on the AFC North kind of reset through free agency, and nobody else in the AFC North has really done anything. I mean, the Ravens signed Nelson Aguilar today, but they have 20 receivers that are exactly the same as Nelson Aguilar already? Like 20 mid receivers that are all the same. So I don't know. They're in a weird place.
What about, now that you mention that, what about Orlando Brown? Because I look at Orlando Brown, he's a tremendous run blocker. But if you're talking about keeping Joe Burrow upright, I don't know. I mean, you study the tape a hell of a lot more than I do. He's not exactly known as being that guy that's gonna, can pass block very well.
Yeah, that deal was kind of astonishing to me because Bengals are going to throw it, right? And they're going to throw it a ton, and he is not very good in pass protection. So gave him a lot of money to do it, too. So we'll see what happens there. Maybe they know something we don't, and it'll work out better. I don't claim to be smarter than these people, but at first glance, I'm kind of like, all right, see what Miles can do over there, right? Like that seems like a pretty good matchup for Miles. So,
Brad, we appreciate the time, man. It was great to catch up with you, and of course, continued success with OBR, the podcast as well. Folks can check out All Eyes on CLE. And, we'll see how the rest of free agency goes. We got the draft. We've got, of course, off-season and more off-season camps and training camps. So we will definitely be dialing you up, and we appreciate your time, buddy. We'll do it again soon.
Anytime, Chico. Glad to have you back, brother.
Thank you, man. I appreciate that. Again, that's Brad Ward. Good stuff. He is always clued in, does a great job with the OBR. It's going to be a good piece, too. Looking forward to that, and I'm glad he gave us a heads up on the OBR. He's going to be doing a AFC North preview with all of the off-season acquisitions. But any thoughts, Nick, what you heard?
Yeah, I like it all. I think the Browns are giving you breadcrumbs offensively, especially with the breaking news of Marquise Goodwin, that this is going to be a pretty different offense. And they really think that Deshaun Watson, despite what we saw last year with some of the inconsistencies, they are confident that this guy could return to greatness and be that guy that he was in Houston. They're going to open this thing up and throw the ball around a little bit.
Okay. 216-626-7901. Now, I am here's the thing with the pot. You can pretty much talk about anything. We want to focus on sports. When you call, and I wanted to mention this a while ago because I think some of you I know have like called a number and it's not your normal screen. Like you'll hear, for me at the radio station I was at, whoever was the update guy would also screen the calls. This is an automated system, so don't be afraid of it. It'll say, leave your name and what you want to talk about. And then it'll put you on hold, and trust me, like you're going to pop up there. It might have to wait a little bit, but I'll get to you as soon as I can. So anybody who's kind of nervous going, wait a minute, it's just, I got an automated system. That's what it's designed to be. Nick, I let's bring in Chad. I'm not exactly sure where he wants to go with this.
Yeah, let's see what happens here.
Chad, welcome to the Chico Borman Show on this Friday. How are you?
Yes, good afternoon. I was going to try and mix it up a little bit. I was getting a little tired of wide receiver talk in March, but I wanted to ask you, transition to the baseball team, and I wanted to ask you, in your opinion, when you look at Savali and Plesac in the starting pitching, and I know last year, Savali, he couldn't stay healthy. I remember going to a game against Boston. The guy was just nibbling all day long.
He had a horrible spring too.
So I don't know if we can trust him. And Plesac, I don't know. And these guys are kind of wild cards. So I guess going into the year, I wanted to ask your opinion. What is your thought on the starting pitching? And are you more bullish on the starting pitching or more bullish on the Indians offense? I just wanted to get your perspective.
Okay. Well, first of all, yeah, Chad, we're going to be, we got no problem talking baseball on this show, and we'll be doing, every Wednesday. We got Brett Boone, and Guardian season is less than a week away, coming up on Thursday in Seattle, and Seattle's going to have a pretty good ball club as well. I think the concerns are warranted. I think I would be less concerned about Aaron Savali, but I also. And he's had a really, really rough spring. Now, in cases of guys that are coming off great years, or sometimes you don't even worry about that, right? But for guys that have been struggling, and Plesac as well, yeah, you're kind of saying to yourself, okay, these guys are going to be counted on, in the bottom of the rotation. Yeah, the top looks very good with Shane Bieber, Tristan McKenzie, Cal Quantrill. But now you're not so sure. I've always thought Aaron Savali is exactly what the Indians look to draft and develop, and he was that. And then that injury, a couple of different injuries, kind of set him, aside a little bit and had him on the shelf. To say, am I more bullish on the offense or the pitching? the starting rotation. I'm just glad, first of all, that we can even entertain that question because it never was brought up about the offense. And I do think while this team is still, they added Josh Bell, and I think he's going to provide some home run punch. This team is going to continue to be what they were a year ago in terms of their style and in terms of, guys getting on base, high percentage there, not going to strike out a lot, which, my God, is like the exact opposite of what we've seen over Major League Baseball. So the Guardians, which is what I love about this organization a lot of the time, when everybody else zigs, they're going to zag. So, okay, everybody's talking launch angle. Everybody's talking about, hitting, 500-foot home runs and swinging out of your shoes. Well, we're not going to do that. I would say that I'm probably still more bullish on that rotation because I think Bieber is still that Cy Young type ace. Again, all this is prefaced with health. Tristan McKenzie, I think finally, I think with Tristan McKenzie, he's always had great stuff. There's a few things that he needed to work through. But I think with Tristan McKenzie, it was more about just, okay, I got to go out and trust my stuff and believe in myself. And he did that last year, and you saw him take off. Cal Quantrill, I think, is going to have another good year. But 4 and 5, yeah. And I mean, right now, you're looking at some guys in the minor leagues that are injured that could be getting a look. I mean, Cody Morris or a guy like Espino, who knows when he's going to get his opportunity. But again, he's been hurt as well. And there are some other guys also. But I just think that those three, and I think of the two, and I hope I'm wrong on this, of the two, I feel a little more confident in Aaron Savali. But I just hope that the injuries are behind him because the spring, like I said, you can look at that and say, well, it's spring training, don't worry about it. But when a guy has struggled as much as he has recently, that is a very big deal. So, all right, thank you for the call, Chad. I was a little the thing about the automation.
That was way off.
I didn't know. The automated system when they. I guess you want to slow down a little bit when you say what you're going to talk about. I thought this guy was going to be talking about
international affairs.
Yes. And I thought, well, this is definitely not the show for that.
We are also live on Twitter Spaces. We had a little bit of breaking news. The Brown side, Marquise Goodwin. So you could come request on Twitter Spaces to chat with Chico live on the show. Just tap that request button on Spaces, or you could call that number 216-626
Twitter Spaces
7901. So we're up on Spaces now too, man.
Okay, so if you want to chime in there as well, I thought to get back to Marquise Goodwin for a second and real quick. I mean, Chad doesn't want to talk about wide receivers in March, and I get it. I mean, trust me, I'm ready for baseball season, but it is free agency. Browns are always going to be a hot topic, and they just signed somebody. So, yeah, we're going to be talking about the wide receiver that they just signed. I thought it was interesting that he said, though, it's kind of a replica as far as, the body size and all that, as far as to Elijah Moore, talking about Marquise Goodwin. Now, we kind of got into it a little bit, and he said the same thing. We didn't really get into the Jets a whole lot, but I think people are putting way too much stock in last year for those that don't like Elijah Moore. And I'm not telling you that this guy's going to be an all-pro and this guy's going to just, knock your socks off, but could he be a guy that gets 1,000 yards? Could he be a guy that catches, I think his rookie year he had 800 yards receiving, 5 touchdowns. I don't see any reason why he couldn't duplicate that.
Yeah, I think that's a realistic expectation. When I think about the whole Marquise Goodwin signing and kind of look at it from the, 100,000-foot view, like I'm sure the Browns are, I'm kind of treating this dude as a rookie. The Jets these last 2 years.
I agree.
I can't let that be any sort of measuring stick to what kind of player this guy is. The highlights of him on the Jets are out there. They're few and far between. It showcases that he has the ability to make plays in the pros. But I really think Browns fans, at least how I'm handling it personally, Chico, I'm treating this guy like a rookie. It's a blank slate for him with Deshaun Watson.
Yeah, and you know, I know you kind of, I wouldn't say you cringed, but when I said that about 1,000 yards and could he be, I guess we're all anticipating that, you know, if Deshaun Watson is back to being Deshaun Watson, well, obviously, you know, what does a superstar player do? Makes everybody around you better. Now, I do scoff and laugh when people say, well, he'll just throw guys open. It doesn't happen that way. But are they going to be airing it out a lot more? Is there going to be, I mean, defenses now, and that's the thing, you know, when if you get into and even with Baker, and I was a Baker defender for a while, and I still think he wasn't as bad as people say. I certainly came to know that, yeah, he's not going to be the guy that can do everything you want him to do, but there was a lot to like with him. But the one thing with Baker and then, you know, Brissett, although Brissett did play very well last year, if you're in the NFL and you're a defense and you know that a team is not capable or will not really even attempt to go down the field, your job is so much easier. I mean, your job is cake. And I remember 2 years ago when the Patriots absolutely just blasted the Browns?
Yeah.
And that was I mean, Belichick doesn't need any help, obviously. I mean, this guy's in a laboratory since he's been about 8 years old with his dad and whatnot. But if you're gonna tell any team, or if you're gonna show to any team, let alone the Patriots and Bill Belichick, hey, we don't really have a guy that can get downfield, healthy or not. Wide receivers are kind of thin. I mean, it's just taking candy from a baby. So just the idea that you're going to have that threat, and he's going to have to make good on those threats down the field, but just that idea is going to open up a lot. And, oh, by the way, let's not forget, you do have arguably the best running back in the game in Nick Chubb. So,
yeah, and I think they're truly going to stick true to the word. I know the reports leaked early after last offseason where fans were a little bit upset with the offense. I mean, they went how many games in a row where they couldn't even put up 20 points. So I think this thing is going to look very, very, very different come September. And I do think they want to be a normal 2023, 2020s NFL offense. They want to be like the Chiefs. They want to be like the Bengals, like the Bills. It's a copycat league. We know analytics and Andrew Berry are all about finding those trends and running with them. The trend right now is you win games by throwing the football, and adding a guy like Goodwin who's speedy, like Moore who's young and speedy, like Jordan Akins who's a big red zone threat, to pair with David Njoku.
but you certainly don't forget about Nick Chubb.
And you certainly never forget about Nick Chubb. And I'm curious to see how that looks, though, because
We've
with
been
all these
saying
weapons
that for years.
and with all these mouths that need fed in terms of the receiving room, I wonder what that means for one Nick Chubb.
Hey, folks, want to let you know, we mentioned this earlier in the show, but we've got an autographed Brian Sipe jersey giveaway. Everybody loves Brian Sipe, of course. When we talk about the Cardiac Kids, and he was it. Number 17 jersey, you can follow at Chico Show Cle. That's at Chico Show CLE on Twitter. Find the giveaway, retweet that giveaway, and then subscribe to the Chico Borman Show on YouTube to win. We're running this giveaway all week, and then a week from today, next Friday's show, we will announce the winner. So be looking forward to that.
And as far as this Twitter space is going, man, you're kind of popping. So we went live on your Twitter on the Chico Show Cle. We got a handful of people in the space. So if anybody in the space wants to come talk with Chico live, feel free to hit that request. We'll let you speak. And again, on the phones, that number, we're taking calls 216-626-7901 as breaking news hits. The Browns add Marquise Goodwin, some more speed to that offense, and it looks like they kind of want to change their approach a little bit, Chico, and how they man this thing in 2023.
Can you run through real quick, not to get off topic? Can you run? So the Twitter Spaces, like they're just sitting there, they're like hanging out in Twitter land, and then they can just say like hit a button and go, all right, I want to talk, and you can do that.
Yeah, they're listening to you right now. So whether they're at home, whether they're in their car, maybe they're walking their dog, maybe they're at work, they're wherever on Twitter on their phone. They hear you, they hear me live in studio in this room. We're streaming it right off the phone. So then, yeah, there's just this request button in the bottom left-hand corner of the phone. So if anybody wants to pop up and test this and show Chico the magic of Twitter Spaces to come pop in here and talk with them live. And then that way they don't even have to leave the Twitter app. So obviously we have the call-in number for people that are watching on YouTube, the Chico Borman Show, but also on Twitter Spaces. So people that are just natively hanging out on Twitter, reading the news about Marquise Goodwin, maybe they listened to the interview with Brad Ward, then they were popping off, answering some emails. Yeah, they could just pop right in and talk to you right here on Twitter.
This technology, kids, we're not careful, we're going to get ourselves a World Wide Web or something like that. I mean, this is absolutely, it's crazy. So all ways to communicate with the show and great opportunity to do that. All right, we will, if you want to talk about the Browns and Marquise Goodwin and some of the things that we discussed with Brad Ward, you can certainly feel free to do that. Also, I'm glad that Chad mentioned the Guardians because, this is now the juices are going. I'm ready for this baseball season. I think they are ready for this baseball season. You look at this team last year as they get ready for the Seattle Mariners beginning Thursday. They'll have a 4-game set against the Mariners to start the season. And last year at this time, we had no idea. I mean, even me, the eternal optimist, as many of you love to point out. Oh, Chico's just he's a Guardians homer. I mean, you listen, I would get called that all the time.
You're a big baseball fan, period. I mean, we just found out today. Give people a peek behind the curtain. Me, Dave, a couple others from the network are going to go hang out this Sunday. Got a little get together going on Sunday evening. Chico, you're busy with what did you call it? You're all enamored by this technology and Twitter Spaces, and we're taking callers, but we're also doing Twitter. But you said to me some sort of fantasy auction. What is it?
Yeah, it's a National League only auction draft.
God, that's a lot of words altogether.
So I'm in and again, yeah, you're right. I am a baseball junkie. I love it. But I'm in an American League only auction draft, a National League only auction draft, and then I'm also in a combined rotisserie and just the, serpentine draft where you just, whatever, just like you would in a football draft usually.
Yeah.
So the auction drafts aren't as common, and what I was telling you guys was, damn, I would love to go. We had a little, a morale booster. Like, during training camp when the guys will get together and they'll all go bowling, that's kind of what this was going to be, except if Dave were to talk garbage while we're at this activity, then it might be a little bit more than just a morale. I might turn on him. Who knows? But yeah, I had the National League only auction draft, and because of that, you can't just leave. It's not like you can just rank your players and go, or even with a roto type or a serpentine draft, you can just kind of, okay, hey, my turn's up. Oh, I missed it. No big deal. With an auction draft, you've got to be there. So, yeah, I've got that coming up on Sunday. Looking forward to it in 3 baseball leagues. But you think about this team a year ago, and, it was – if they could be, I'm always the eternal optimist. But anybody who was asking me about the Guardians last year, I said, you know what? I don't know. I think for me, success is going to be not necessarily are they a playoff team, but can they be a 500 team, above 500? But can you identify guys that are going to be the future of this club? And we got to get away from, find out, but we got to get away from, if they're not going to be it, guys like Bobby Bradley, Bradley Zimmer, Oscar Mercado, like, you got to move on. This just isn't going to work. And then right before opening day, Stephen Kwan, who, if you follow the Guardians, a lot of people knew about him, that, he was a contact guy, and he was, he played at, I think it was Oregon State, and he was somebody that kind of fit what they were looking to do, but nobody knew he was going to have the year that he had. But that was an opening day announcement. Like, hey, Bradley Zimmer is out. I think he went to Colorado. And opening day, it's going to be Stephen Kwan. And I think he started in right. He ends up, going in left, and that's where he's going to start the season this year. But he was one of 17 others, or 16 others, 17 total, that made their major league debut, and they still won 92 games. Like, optimistic or not, and a homer or not, whatever words you guys want to use about me, I never saw that happening. So now, like, with the season right around the corner, I mean, the White Sox are going to be better. And we're going to get into, next week, we're going to have a lot of previews. We're going to have somebody on from the White Sox to talk about the White Sox and their managerial change and what their lineup is going to look like without Jose Abreu, but certainly they're hoping some healthier bodies. We're going to have an AL preview, NL preview, all of that sort of thing. And, of course, we'll talk to Booney on Wednesdays. But, yeah, it's not that far away. And while free agency and the news is going to dominate too, and that's fine, Nick, give me some baseball. I'm ready. And the World Baseball Classic kind of, I mean, if it didn't have you doing somersaults and, oh, my gosh, now I'm going to watch 162 games, I get it. But it was pretty hard to watch that and not get, pretty excited and not get the juices flowing a bit.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've never been a big, watch spring training games on TV guy. Like, I'll always watch the first one because it feels so good that baseball's back. But then it kind of, that excitement tapers off for me because it goes on a very long time. I mean, last week of March, we still have nothing but spring training games. So having that World Baseball Classic and the way that they marketed it this year, the way they pushed it this year, it was so good from kind of start to finish. I'm with you. It has me probably as excited, if not more excited, for baseball as I've ever been. Couple that with the fact that the Guardians just went on that little mini run. They gave us that little taste that we got last year where, man, they look good against the Rays. Man, they look good in the first couple games against the Yankees, and then we all know what happened. I'm excited now. I think this team is in a very good spot, and I think that they're going to be a lot of fun. And give us a lot of fun moments throughout the summer.
And you know what else makes me excited? And, the fact that Tito's back and healthy. He's had a few, he's getting up there and he's had a few health issues. But this guy, and I think many people here realize it and appreciate it, he is an absolute treasure in the entire game of baseball. I mean, he is without question a Hall of Famer. But what he's meant to Cleveland, what he means in that clubhouse to those players, and you don't go through a season like last year where you have those 17 guys. You don't overcome the obstacles they did and win 92 games without Terry Francona. And that's not to say that, hey, the players are up, but there is no way in hell. I would venture a guess that there's no other manager, because he knows this is how it's going to be in Cleveland, that you're not going to go out and get just high-priced free agents and pluck them off and plug them in everywhere. So he's okay with, hey, we're going to have to mix and match. We're going to have to kind of on the fly develop some of these guys and get a good read on these guys. For him to win and that team to win 92 games, and he was the AL Manager of the Year for a reason, he's just, like I said, he's an absolute treasure. All right. What wasn't a treasure were last night's picks by me in the Sweet 16. I told you that I thought Arkansas would beat UConn, and they were never in it. From the opening tip, it was all Huskies all the time. 88-65 UConn. I said, well, FAU, yeah, that's nice. But Tennessee, bludgeon Duke. FAU, it's been nice. Don't let the door hit you in the rear end. FAU, of course, upsets Tennessee 62-55. I said, I don't think UCLA and Gonzaga is going to be particularly close. It won't be a blowout, but I think UCLA is going to beat Gonzaga. And, of course, Gonzaga beat UCLA 79-76. So tonight's games, San Diego State, 5 seed, taking on Alabama in that South region. Bama didn't need any help, but they're getting help as far as who's left in that region in their path to the Final Four. Bama is a 7.5-point favorite. The other early game, Jimmy Larinaga and the Miami Hurricanes taking on Houston. Houston is also a 7.5-point favorite against the Canes. And then the later games, Creighton, 10-point favorites over the Darlings, those Princeton Tigers, those smart guys who also can play some basketball. And then the final tip tonight will be Texas, Boobie Gibson's Longhorns against Xavier, and Texas is a 4.5-point favorite. So we said it wasn't set in stone. Nick, you have the ability, the opportunity to change. I think you said you like the Alabama giving 7.5. You think they can win by even more than that. And the way they're playing, I don't think it's a bad bet. Have you decided to stick with that and stay with Alabama, or is there another game you're looking at?
I'm sticking with it. I'm sticking with it. It was my pick since all the way back on Monday. I figure there's no reason to change it now. It's the first game on the slate. It's 1 versus 5. Obviously doesn't matter as much here as we whittle these things down into the Sweet 16. I just look at these other games. Houston and Miami, Florida, I don't trust it. Houston, I get that they're getting healthy, but there's still some injury questions there for me. And Miami, Florida is a good club. Princeton and Creighton, I told you this the other day. I'm not touching Princeton. They scare me. I think that they're good, but I don't know if they're 10.5 or 9.5 was that spread good. And then Xavier, they've screwed me on bets all year long. And then Texas is good. I don't want to go against Boobie. So, yeah, I'm going with my initial pick today at 6:30. Bama covers that 7.5 and hopefully wins me my first bet in a while.
Okay, I like that. And we might have to get a little parlay action going here after the show. We'll bring in, of course, the brains of the whole operation, Dave. But
that almost choked you to say.
We'll do that. Yeah, it really did. All right, we are just about out of time here on this Friday. It has been a fun week. Again, a full week of being on the air, back on the air. I'm so appreciative, and I mean that to every one of you out there that has been supportive. If you're listening, and if you're not, and you're having a hard time trying to find the show, go to YouTube and the Chico Borman Show. Subscribe there. On Twitter, a lot of you are doing that. Why not? It's easy. Go to @Chico Show, CLE, and then, of course, bigplay.com. But it is just, this has been an awesome, awesome week. A lot to talk about, obviously, but most importantly, being able to interact with you people. And Nick, great job as always.
Thanks, man.
And also Dave McAllister and the whole crew, everybody just doing a fantastic job. I am Mike Chico Borman. Thanks to Brad Ward for joining us earlier in the show. We're going to be talking plenty next week. We'll continue with the free agency, yes, but we got the Cavs winding down the regular season, pretty much on that collision course to taking on the New York Knicks. NCAA tournament, we're going to be talking about the Final Four. And then, of course, Major League Baseball. Oh, yeah, we're going to be talking plenty as the Guardians get set to open up the 2023 campaign. Until Monday at 1 o'clock, make it a great weekend, everybody. See you.